Not medical. Well, I think it's not fair if he's out there with well, you can slide it on one if you want to. We'll get back, don't worry. Is he here? He must be in the building now.
Miss Tomlin. Thank you, children. You've done a wonderful job. Thank you. Dr. King, we took the liberty of raising your surgery today, and here's your chair. And so you don't get away, Bob has strapped you as you did all your patients.
There you are. This is the point of no return.
Thank you all very much indeed for coming this evening, and because of you, we are very thrilled to have been able to fly in his daughter today from Canada. Well, actually, we flew her in yesterday. So welcome. I should like to call upon Tim Dodd to say a few words, please.
The other day, I met John King in Morton and told him that they'd pressurised me to say a few words tonight. And I said to him, I can't think why they've asked me. He said, well, I suppose it is because you've been around longer than anybody else. Like truth, I was born and bred here. Which reminds me of a similar presentation some years ago when the late Canon Harry Shields from Wick Rithington, who many of you will remember, was presenting a fellow clergy who was retiring, said, I suppose I'm here because I'm the old man of the hills. I don't reckon to be old, but certainly I belong to the Cotswolds, and so does Michael, because he was very much part of the Cotswolds and part of this community. And he was, in fact, born not very far away at Chipping Norton. And they moved to Stow in 1920, which also happens to be the year that my father came to Broadwell, although my mother was born here. So I suppose I have some justification as being a local to be standing here tonight. Doctors King have looked after 4 generations of my family, with a 5th very much on the way. But I've no doubt there are other people here tonight who can better that record. Dr. Leslie King, Michael's father, took over the Stow practice in 1920 when Dr. Dedding retired. And he had his surgery at that time next to the White Hart, which is now known as Priory Studio. Before he built the surgery across the other side of the Causeway. Michael qualified as a doctor at Liverpool, and as a young doctor, worked in the East End of London, where he witnessed the horror of the Blitz. On the 24th of July, 1945, he married Catherine in Edinburgh. And soon after that, after his mother's death, he returned to Stow to join his father in practice. My first recollection as a small child of Dr. Leslie was when he came to vaccinate a group of small children at Broadwell Hill. As you might expect, there were screams and cries of protest, and Dr. Leslie could see he was not going to get anywhere with us. So he picked up a teddy bear and injected that. There, he said, Teddy didn't cry. So what's all this fuss about? We all had our injections without a murmur. This typifies the calm and compassionate way the Doctors King have always treated their patients. Like his father, Michael enjoyed a day's hunting when he could spare the time, and some kind patient would lend him a horse. But on those occasions, the inevitable always happened. Someone fell off, there was a loud shout, "Doctor!" and Michael missed the rest of the hunt, because he was spent his time picking up the 4 unfortunate riders. His better known recreations was the North Cotswold Motor Club, of which he was very much the driving spirit in the 60s and 70s. And if ever I saw an open car driven at speed and great accuracy on the straight road from Broadwell to Evenlode, I didn't need a second look to see who was driving it. I knew that it was the doctor in a hurry. He also enjoyed a bit of skiing, and if ever there was any snow here in Stow, he'd got his ski run below his house in action. And he invented his own ski lift in order to get back up again, with a small engine and a rope which would pull you back up. He also enjoyed ice skating, and if ever our farm pond got anywhere near to freezing over, I would get a message, "Is it frozen yet? Will it bear us?" And as soon as it did, he was down there like a shot. He also enjoyed a bit of sailing, and we very nearly lost our doctor a few years ago in that horrific fastnet race when so many sailors and yachts were lost. But we are very pleased that you survived, so that tonight we can thank you for the wonderful way you've looked after so many of us for so many years. After 70 years, the community around Stow will be a different place without a Dr. King, but I have little doubt that the choice of his successors will be worthy to carry on the great name of King. And we do hope that you and Catherine will have a long and happy retirement. And now I have great pleasure, if you would like to pull this screen back. If you'd like to reveal the body, Michael.
Does it fine? I think I should be planning permission. To learn about how to use all that.
For those who are not sure what this is a wood lathe, and apparently this is Dr. King's hobby, and I'm hoping that he will really use this, together with a chainsaw. I now call upon Mrs. Bailey, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege, I'm sure, to be here. I apologise for my lack of voice. I think the fact that I can speak at all must be a great tribute to the obviously ongoing great skills of Stow surgery. Strangely enough, in 1920, which seems to have been a slightly magic year in these parts, my parents returned from the Far East with my sister and myself. We went to live in Upper Slaughter. The King family were just over the hill, unnoticed for a while, but obviously we tripped over them in the fullness of time. As far as I remember, our lives were practically entirely surrounded by dogs, horses and ponies. And life was quite pleasant. I first discovered that Michael King was probably quite a good chap when I went out hunting, and not very surprisingly fell off. He was kind enough to catch my horse, and not only that, but to stop and wait until I got on it again. It isn't everyone who does this, you know, for young people who can't ride very well, but he did this for me, and I'm so grateful. After this happy period, things like education and the end of the years of what I think were called pipe and peace rather descended on us. And so, after several years of fairly, I think, active service for king and country on probably both our parts, we were reunited back in Stow, where I found Leslie King, still doctor, who was a friend of mine, and I used to do the odd little job for him when he asked me to. Greatly to my amazement, the fresh-faced youth whom I used to know returned as a fully qualified doctor, and was brought to see my father, who was ailing, and thereafter became Dr. Michael King of Stow. I think and hope we've done quite a lot of jobs together over the years. I nursed in this district, as some of you may know. I really think now all I have to say is, looking round this packed hall, I've seldom, if ever, seen such a healthy, strong, thriving community. And I can't think whose fault it is, unless it is Dr. King, his predecessor, and his successors. It's been a very great honour. Goodness knows why they asked me to do this. I suppose I've been around for a long time. And I really do trust that Michael, your shadow, will never grow less, as we used to be told in the Far East when we lived in those parts. It gives me great pleasure to present you with this picture, which is a view from your surgery, which I hope you will enjoy.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. And now, if I could ask Miss Pittman, please, to come forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and patients, young and old, new and old, I am reading from this piece of paper because I was asked a few weeks ago if I would like to take part in the evening of the meeting of Dr. King's retirement. And I said, yes, I'd love to. I thought it would mean presenting a present to Michael King from the patients. But, to my horror, I learned a couple of nights ago that I wasn't going to present anything. I had got to unveil a plaque which is going to be put in the square and the wall of St. Edward's Hall. Will you help me turn this, please, Michael? I would like to read this now to you. It is a presentation of the care given to the people of this county by Dr. Michael King, general practitioner here for 44 years, 3rd February 1990. I was very upset about this because it upset the speech that I arranged. To my horror, I say yesterday I was asked to make this instead of a present. I'm not going to make a speech because the one we've just heard from Mrs. Bailey and Mrs. Hill, nothing could be more charming. But it would be difficult to offer anything after those two. And so I will just tell you two short stories, which take me back to the years when I was in the surgery over 20 years ago. The first story was soon after Dr. Michael joined his father in partnership. He was looking after a little girl about 8 years old who was suffering from pneumonia. And pneumonia in those days was a killer. I don't think sulfonamides were on the practice in those days. Anyway, what was called the crisis arrived at one finally, and if the patient couldn't go on any longer, choking over the coughing, and the breathing so difficult, and the temperature ghastly, if they couldn't cope with that anymore, they died. But the other side of that watershed was the breathing a little easier, was the coughing a little less, and was the temperature falling? And if the patient passed that Rubicon, they lived, and the little girl lived. But she said to her mother a few days later, "I like the doctor who's looking after me, Mummy, but when's the real doctor coming to see me?" And the next story was 2 or 3 years later. Telephone rang in the morning, and somebody from Norton said, "Would the doctor please go at once? There was a man rushing about the village with a knife in his hand, and everybody was terrified." And Mr. Hill said, Dr. King in those days was a brilliant motor rally driver. So it didn't take him long to get to Norton. And he saw that man racing about the village waving his knife, and he chased him. And the man jumped over the wall into the field, and the doctor followed him and brought him down with a tackle. Which was a young man playing rugby for England and went to be proud of. And he sat with that man until he recovered, and then walked him home to his family. Well, that messed up my speech, but I was trying to speech now. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. I told you 2 stories. So, right after that, I think I'm very going to say good night, Michael. Before I do step off the, whatever it is, I'd like to say a quotation from Spencer, a poet who lived 100 years ago. Oh, hundreds of years, not 800, hundreds of years ago. To quote him, "I wonder if Michael will one winter evening be sitting in an armchair beside a lovely fire and thinking in terms of Spencer's quotation, 'Oh, how goodly usage were those ancient days.'" Good night.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Whitman. Mrs. Lyons.
No speech, Michael, but here is a present from all your patients, the Doomsday.
Mrs. Checketts, please.
I'll just hand you my red card.
Are you sure you've got an appointment?
when this committee was first formed, there were various ideas that we thought that Michael might like. And to anyone who's ever been to his house, there's a paragraph in there that tells one the pressure of the weather. And I suggested something that I knew about, and everyone said, "Ooh, what's that? Oh, no, we can't possibly do that." But Michael, come and have a look. It's a bit more than a barometer, because this little piece fits on the chimney somewhere.
Right.
And you've got wind direction, wind speed, and a barometer, minimum maximum temperature, with a light and a memory and
So that's 2 lots of planning permission, I think.
When we were asked to be associated with this presentation, we asked what on earth could we get him. We wanted to get him something that he would enjoy and to be able to use regularly and think of us. After all, you know, I mean, he's been with us for a long time, but we still wanted him to think about us. And we found out that he had mentioned to Dr. Catherine that it would be rather nice to have a power chainsaw, which you have. We've got it for you. But, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to have a lathe, which we've got for you? Or perhaps a barometer, which we've got for you. You did say that perhaps it would be nice to have a little lawnmower. Well, it's a little bit bigger, but it's rather nice. And you can feed your sheep quite well because there's a little trail on the back which you can put your bells of hay in. And you've got your own personalised number plate. But I'm very upset, Dr. King, because there was a little bit on the bottom that said fiberglass dinghy. We couldn't manage that. But we did get this for you, and we hope that you'll enjoy that. I think that would be all right. It's been great fun doing this, and we've had lots of lovely little messages from various people. The letters that we've had have been absolutely superb. And you've all signed the book downstairs. For any of you that have friends that would like to sign that book, it will be in the library for 2 weeks, downstairs. And if there is anyone that would like to sign it that can't get to it, I'll willingly take it to them. A few other things that have been mentioned. One dear lady did mention that she'd been under the King family for 75 years. And she felt it was rather sad that they didn't let her go first. One other gentleman said to me that when he was 12 years old, Dr. King saved his life. He had a brain tumour, and I'm very happy to say that he's here today, he's with us this evening, and he'd like to say a few words. Would you like to come forward, Mr. King?
My appointment, Dr. King. I've never made a speech before, but it's worth it for you. All I've got is an appointment card for you. But there's something inside it. Dr. Michael. Should we call it abdication? When the king no longer rules, scribbles out his last prescription and puts down his healing tools, will no longer pay attention when an epidemic's rife, perhaps, but Dr. M.D. King, today, this is your life. You started in maternity a year or 2 ago, in a place called Chipping Norton, which is not too far from Stow. The actual date is secret. Let it suffice if we say, between 1910 and 20, you were well upon your way. When
When we came to 1920, though, your father was resolved to begin his own new practice all around Stow-on-the-Wold. As childhood continues, reports were not too bad. In fact, most people here will say you were a super lad. All too soon comes time for Cambridge. I'm afraid I must confess there is little trace of evidence to see how you progress. But I'm sure your learned tutors recognised here was no fool when they sent you on to London to the hospital med school. Next, at Alderhay in Liverpool, you met Dr. Catherine. And far away in Edinburgh did married life begin. But when the war had ended, the battle had been won, you returned to join the practice entitled King and Son. The people of the Cotswolds were a little bit afraid, using tourniquets and leeches as their main forms of first aid. However, faithful post-Stow became a bit more willing when you introduced the modern drugs and they paid not a shilling. Dolan Moor, Brands Hatch and Goodwood often thrilled you with their race. Broadwell, Morton, Loughborough became your daily place. And should you ever tire of the rolling Cotswold hills, then the rolling of the Solent would provide you with your thrills. Well, let's get back to surgery, where you would never shirk. You would see that all your patients were quickly back at work. Some locums for a month or two, then Dr. Robinson joined up with MD's practice, and it adds to all the fun. Now in that lovely surgery, I'm told that quite a few kept coming back only because they loved that marvellous you. But don't forget Miss Pitman. Should you forget your card, you'd get a fair old dressing down. You'd get a fair old dressing down and chucked out in the yard. When all bags are plastered and all the babies born, if you are not on call, mount up to follow Huntsman's horn. And NCMC, what is that? Where drivers get their thrills by pounding out their pistons up steep and muddy hills. The surgery went walkabout, the Triumph V-test gone, and doctors' names were rearranged. But MD King works on. We thought you were eternal and never would give in. 1 million patients treated by a pleasant, if right, ring. So now then, Dr. Michael, all these years have whistled by. At least as far as work's concerned, it's time to say goodbye. From hundreds of your patients, may I humbly present a wish for both the Doctor's King of long retirement. Well, that more or less brings an end to the proceedings, Michael, except that now that everyone else has said their words, now it's your turn.
What a lot of friends. It's quite magnificent. I'm flattered, I'm gasped. To put it together, I'm flabbergasted. Your generosity and the marvellous things you've said this evening. can't really understand how this could have come about. Particularly, I'd like to thank Tim Hill for making those introductory remarks. That's super of him. I've spent a fair amount of time over the last few days deciding what I was going to say tonight, jotting it down, correcting it, crossing it out, rewriting it, and here it all is. But there isn't time. You all said such wonderful things that this is going by the board. It will be locked up somewhere or burned. But there are a few things that clearly I've got to say. And where I go down through this and find the right things, I shall be lucky. I was going to say, for instance, that this will go on for an hour and while you're sitting comfortably, and then I'll begin. But we'll skip that one. I would like to comment that perhaps Bunny Denning may be here tonight, or if she is not, I can quite understand it, but point out that she is the daughter of my father's first partner here, and they came into partnership. And from time to time we have delightful conversations about those early days of Leslie King being here and me being knee-high to a grasshopper down at Lower Swell where we lived. I was going to talk about some medical history because clearly this is a sort of history event where for 70 years or so there has been a Dr. King here. And it was going to be rather fun, but not nearly as much fun as we've already had tonight. So all those bits about medical history are going by the board. So that those of you who've stood so long won't have to stand very much longer. I think the important thing to say is the future for Stow in relation to the surgery and its medicine and the health of all you people. For me, of course, it's a tremendous joke to have to stop. And I've only had 48 hours, or is it a little over, to try and discover what it's going to feel like. About a year's time, I'll let you know. Just now, it's a confusion, not made any less confused by all this stuff around me that I've now got to learn to work. For the surgery, I'm very much comforted and excited by the enthusiastic team that there is here now. It's a challenge that they're having to take on with the events that the National Health Service is putting upon the whole of the country, not just general practice, but on the hospitals as well. And I'm glad to say that that team at the surgery, the doctors, the office staff, the nurses, are really gritting their teeth to make the best of a bad job, for, in my opinion, that's what it is, this money-orientated approach to the National Health Service. And they are orientated, I'm happy to say, to your care and not to the government's care of the tenants. They will see to it that your health is cared for first. Hopefully they'll be able to make enough pennies from doing so. But if there's doubt about that, your health will come before the pennies. There is a little bit of doubt about my health in the future. Your health, I know, is all right. It's safe in their hands. But there was a friend in surgery seeing me the other day, husband and wife. They apologized that they wouldn't be able to be here tonight. They were so sad that they wouldn't be able to attend my funeral. And another lot of people had said that they wanted to know a bit about my life in case they had to talk here tonight. So would I write my obituary? Another delightful 90-year-old in Stow-on-the-Wold, a lady who has been cared for by my father and by me later, really made me feel quite comforted when she said, I've been looked after by 3 kings, and now I've got the commoners. I must say my thanks in profusion for all tonight's events, But I've also got to think back to how I came to have enjoyed my life here in Stow and my work. Thinking back, for instance, to my father, and you've all heard about him tonight. He was half my life of being here, and of course, my dear mother Eunice, who sadly, the other half, never saw me back in Stow. I know that she had probably wanted that this would happen, but she died following a hunting accident just before I came here. Amongst the names that I have thought to say thank you to for all my happiness here, of course, comes Pitters, bless her. Catherine, or Miss Pittman, or sometimes the ogre. She beat me to it by about 6 or 8 months, joined Leslie King in the spring, I think, of the year when I came in the autumn.
1945.
45, that's it. And she helped me along in my first and early days of being a very quaky person. When am I going to see the proper doctor? And the other one, of course, was, oh, well, yes, I remember you when you were on a pony. So this didn't really help my early years along very well, but Pitt was a great support in those days. And then, of course, the practice progressed after my father had left, when Derek joined the practice. And we worked in close cooperation and shared responsibility, consulted with each other about your problems before problems to us. We used to have enormous times in the surgery, whiffs of gas for shoulders that had been put out, and all sorts of minor operations. But especially our work in maternity, I think, was really the highlight of the era with Derek and me in the practice. You've heard from him about one of the hair-raising stories 3 years ago, so I can't give you that one, of a maternity case in a house with not very good conditions. But the greatest amount of the maternity fund was in Morton Hospital, where we were well supported. And after the works were usually done, there was always a good cup of milk or coffee or something to brace us up, as well as the support that the mums got from all the staff. 3 years ago was the time when Derek and Catherine retired, and Stephen, Ossie, standing in the doorway, good evening, sir, joined the team. Judy and Anne must also be thanked in the office for their work over a number of years. And Elizabeth Gane, who has rejoined us, having been in the office and helping it along soon after Miss Pittman left. And it's a delight to have her back again. Of course, we've had tremendous support all the way down the years from the district nurses. And some of you may remember that dear lady, Nurse Walker, a great Christian, a missionary who had been in foreign lands for years, particularly, I think, from China. And she was a noble support to all the mums of Stow, I think, in the latter part of the war, and certainly in the years that I joined from 45 onwards. The hospitals, too, Morton and Bolton, have been tremendous, and continue to be so. And I'm extraordinarily grateful to all their staffs who've helped me through difficult times, problems. The others I'd like to mention particularly are the ambulance staff. At the moment they're going through a rough patch. They've always been a remarkable bunch of men. Right from the start in this neighbourhood, when there was one ambulance at Blockley, and I think the name of the gentleman, some of you may be able to correct me, was Mr. Pierce. Well, Percy. Mr. Percy. Used to run the Blockley ambulance, and then later, I think, Mr. Wells. That was the ambulance for the whole of the North Cotswolds. Conditions have changed quite a lot, but they're still run by devoted people who give tremendous service. Because the other important person in my life has been all of you as patients. It's been a tremendous joy to have your care and to know that you have been supportive of your doctor's efforts albeit halting at times, sometimes successful, and then we were all happy and glad. Your ability to put up with the moods of this man who get quite stroppy at times has been quite remarkable, and you come back smiling next time. Dr. Catherine 3 years ago made a comment, which I got up my sleeve in case I ever got to this position, but I repeat it, because I was so pleased that she felt it too. But one of the great privileges that we have as general practitioners is the way in which you accept us into your homes and into your private lives, so willingly and gladly. This is a thing that very few people in serving have that confidence. The nurses have it, the doctors have it on 1 or 2 hours. It's a great privilege. I haven't mentioned Catherine in terms of my support over the years. She is the last one. I don't think I should. Thank you, you said it for me. If I try to put into words, I think there would be a certain amount of wetness on my face. As regards tonight, Yvonne Johnson and Bob. Very special mention to both of them and to their team. They've had a marvellous team who came to tea with me yesterday. Sadly, Tim Healy couldn't be there because he was working. I should have really taken over duty for him. And the conversation went on peaceably over cups of tea and a bit of cake. And I wondered when someone was going to get down to the business of what the heck they'd come. And after about 20 minutes, there was a little bit of toing and froing, telephone call or something. And about 5 minutes after that, a young lady arrived in the passageway just outside the door. I looked and thought, well, I think I know her, but who is she? It was Deborah's arrival. It did take me 2 or 3 seconds to identify. When you live over 3,000 miles away, you're not expected in my door. So thank you everyone who has contributed to bringing Deborah over here. That really, I think, is all I have to say, except one little thing: you haven't got rid of me yet. I've had my first job given by the practice. I'm coming to do locum for a couple of days at the end of February.
Thank you very much for organising everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is outside in the kitchen, which will be sort of brought out amongst you some food. So you don't have to rush off straight away. There will be food and there's still some wine left available as well, I think. So stay and mingle and talk, and from now on you're on your own, really. It was very nice, and it must show how much everyone loves my cooking that so many people turned out tonight. Thank you all very much.